This is Tanya Lynn
and Laura Swan with the Sistership Circle podcast.
From spirituality, sexuality, and sisterhood
to business, relationships, contribution, and creativity.
The Sistership Circle podcasts introduce a new model of feminine leadership
where women get to get real and vulnerable about it all.
Tune in for authentic advice that will empower you
to be bold, beautiful, and brilliant as your true self.
Welcome to the Sistership Circle podcast. I am Tanya Lynn, and I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to an incredible woman who has also in the past been a mentor to me and is coming out with a new book that I am just so excited about. And so I'm just going to dive right in and introduce you to this incredible woman by first reading her bio. So, Miss Bari Tessler Linden, MA, is a financial therapist, mentor coach, and mamapreneur. Bari's gentle, body-centered approach weaves together personal, couple, and creative entrepreneurial money teachings into one complete tapestry. She is the founder of The Art of Money, a global year-long money school which integrates money healing, money practices, and money maps. Bari is also the author of her upcoming book, The Art of Money, a life-changing guide to financial happiness, published by Parallax Press on June 14th, 2016. And you can learn more about Bari, and I'm sure she's going to, share lots of goodies with you of, how to get the book and everything. But you can find her at baritessler.com, and that link is below in the show notes. So let's dive in. Welcome, Bari. So excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I want to start with a little bit about your journey so that everyone listening can understand how you got to this place of being able to teach this year-long mentorship program on money and now come out with a book. So before we actually get into what the book is and all the juicy things that you can share with us about money, what has been your journey to get where you are today?
Sure. So, I grew up as a dancer. So I did a lot of jazz dance growing up and, hit teenage years. And I think I either wanted to be a solid gold dancer when I grew up or a businesswoman. And as a teenager, I asked to go to therapy. So that's interesting part of my story. But so I put them all together and decided to go to graduate school in somatic psychotherapy. So in somatic psychology. So went to Naropa University in my 20s, and we had to be our own case study, it was an incredible experience and journey. And I worked in the mental health field and hospice and bereavement and led bereavement groups and led authentic movement groups. And for me, it was around 28 years old when my school loan came due. And that was the epiphany. Like that was the moment where I was either going to go screaming, like running away and traveling forever, or I was going to face this area of my life that I realized in that split second that I did not have a relationship with. So we had studied every other topic under the sun and beyond, training to be therapists, literally everything. And they completely left out the topic of money. And, I didn't realize it until the school loan came due and all these questions came, flooding into me of, well, how am I going to pay this back? I have a master's degree, but I'm earning $11 an hour. How am I going to start a private practice and work with my couples? This is one of the biggest areas of tension is a relationship to money. And yet we receive no training. How the heck am I going to start a private practice and do the bookkeeping and the accounting? And it went on and on. So it just became a moment where I decided to face it and not run away. And I started learning everything that I could about bookkeeping from the ground on up. And everyone around me was like, what the hell is going on? Like, you're creative, dancer, therapist. I was reading accounting books and QuickBooks manuals and Quicken manuals in bed. And my husband, who was my boyfriend, would look over at me going, what are you doing? And it just, I didn't think I wasn't smart in math and science growing up. I knew I was smart in many other ways, but not in that way. And so I'd equated, if I'm not good at math, then I can't do money. If I'm not good at math, then I can't learn a bookkeeping system. And also just as training as a therapist, we weren't supposed to talk about money. We weren't supposed to strive for money. Anyone who's on a psycho-spiritual path, which was everyone around me, we were also taught to, money was not spiritual. We weren't supposed to strive for it, want it, talk about it. And it just became this doorway for me. I thought I'd be doing work around sexuality, sensuality, intimacy, relationship. And I'm certainly doing work on intimacy and relationship and body and health and all of that, but it's the doorway of money. And I never imagined, in a million years would I ever have imagined that. And so to get more current, it was just, I started learning bookkeeping. I had a bookkeeping business for therapists and contractors and artists. And I learned more about them by doing their bookkeeping and looking at their patterns than by doing private therapy. I was also 32. I still felt too young to be starting my own private practice. And then right around that time, I started realizing it was time to really integrate all this deep training that I had as a therapist, how to hold space through all the life's ebbs and flows, yeah, and ups and downs, and all of these new systems and tools and practices that I was learning around money. I was fascinated, and I just realized it was time to bring them all together and to complete it. Of course, I thought I was the only one with these issues, right? Like, I'm the only one with money shame, or I'm the only one who doesn't have a relationship with money, or and then I start looking around and realizing that all my community, who also had been doing so much work on themselves, this was the missing piece. This was still the shadow. This was still the taboo. This was still a last frontier. And no matter what background they came from, no matter what economic background they came from, they all had money issues, and they all had strengths around money and challenges. And so obviously I wasn't the only one. And then I just started putting together my methodology. And that's a whole other story. And then taught it in 10-person groups over and over and over and over. And eventually, now 15 years later, teach the year-long Art of Money. And this year we have 400 students all over the world. And it's my favorite teaching model and business model. Mm. That's a little bit about my story.
Well, because I would like to talk about your program, but before we go there, I've had the privilege of taking a little sneak peek at your book, which is fabulous.
I'm going to show the picture. This is the book galley.
Yes.
So it's going to be a hardcover, but this is.
I love it.
It's almost 300 pages. And it was hard work getting that created. So anyway, please continue.
Well, that's actually, I'm just going to follow that thread right there. Is what do you think was the hardest piece for you around writing the book, editing, publishing? What was the most difficult piece, like that breakthrough piece for you?
Oh my God. There are so many moments, from deciding to write the book proposal to having the publisher contact me, which was, I think it's all our dream come true, right? That the publisher's going to show up one day and do it. So I think in any journey, there's some really hard things and there's some easier things. And the easier was that the publisher showed up at my door and asked if I had been considering writing a book. And I said, well, yeah, we're almost done with the book proposal. So that was the timing of that. And sent it over, and Parallax was the right fit for me. I wound up creating a whole set of criteria of, like, I want to have final say on book cover design. I want to have final say on title and subtitle, and went on and on. But I didn't know any of this before. I hadn't researched. I didn't really know, was I going to get an agent? Was I going to shop it around? Was I going to self-publish? I haven't answered your question because there's so many points along the way. So let's see. I need a co-writer. So I love teaching. I love being a therapist. I love creating the content. I come up with concepts and ideas and exercises galore. And for me to write, I have to be locked in a room, secluded on a sabbatical. And that's how I wrote my 150-page master thesis. So it was really 7 years ago, I learned that I needed a co-writer. And at first it was hard. It was like, well, I should be good at everything, and I should just learn the craft of writing, and I should And then I realized, well, my son came. That's what happened 7.5 years ago. And then we get even better with our healthy boundaries. We get even better with our no's, right? And I learned how to find a co-writer, and I learned how to co-write. And so my gal Angela, I've been with her for 5 years. So she was my copywriter, my co-writer, and I knew she was the one. So the hardest thing was, it wasn't co-writing, because we'd been doing that for 5 years. But we thought we would just duplicate articles, and like, we have so much material in our articles and so much material in our online program. But it was a completely different kind of writing, or you needed to vision each chapter in a completely, with a story, and it's part memoir, as you know, it's part memoir, part teachings, part practices. So we were really good at the co-writing. We'd had 5 years history. The hardest thing for me was when we sent off the 120,000 page manuscript to the team at Parallax and got it back a month later. And the editor had destroyed the book and ripped it apart. And my husband had so many good metaphors. He said, his first one was, well, they Frankensteined it. The second one was, well, they ripped the head and put it in the crotch, and they took the leg and put it as an arm, and they put the arm. I mean, the entire framework of my methodology was rearranged. The voice was completely changed. 50,000 words were ripped apart. And it was a very, very painful, heartbreaking moment. And I had never had the discussion with the editor of like, what kind of editing do you do? Like, do you make it better? Do you do whatever you want to do because you think your vision is the right way, or according to, I mean, there's a whole spectrum. I didn't know to ask that question. And I basically thought I was walking away from my publishing contract. I read it, my husband read it, my co-writer read it, her mom, who was like the first reader, we all had the same experience. And so I wrote a letter to them saying, this is not my book, this is yours. This is not my voice. You rearrange my methodology. Like, I would have been willing to compromise on so many of these points, but it was way too shocking, and this is not my book. And the publisher called me and immediately on the phone and said, I would never publish anything that you don't want, and I'm going to get you a new editor.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So many lessons in that.
So many lessons in that.
Boundaries and asking for what you want, and then knowing the right questions next time. I mean, but you just standing your ground and like really standing in your value and who you are. It's just so admirable. Thank you for doing that.
Welcome. I couldn't have done it probably 5 years before, 8 years before, so the internal and external value work that I've been doing for years is what led me to, I know my work. Again, it's not that I'm not willing to compromise or discuss things or negotiate or any of that, or open to suggestions, but it went too far. Too far. And I was willing to walk away, even though that would have been so heartbreaking. And I never saw the option that she would offer me another editor. I thought we were done. And so, how we have to always vision, like we have to see it and then believe in it, and then it happens. That was not what happened. In this moment, my only option was I'm walking away, to save my integrity, on and on. And she presented me with an open door and a possibility that I just did not see coming, and really was a beautiful surprise. Yeah.
And now, so the final piece is now a piece that you like, right?
I am really, really proud after, the new editor, many more rounds of editing, tons of line editing. I mean, it took an entire year, really, with the book we wanted to create in the final version. I'm really proud of, and I really love. So, yeah. And it's being, it's coming out in 49 days. So it's on the runway.
Yeah. And I think that just makes it even more juicy and exciting to want to read it, knowing what you had to go through to actually really stand in your voice. So I'm so excited for people to read this. Yeah. So I wanted to dive into, you divided into these 3 different sections. And then the beginning, is around the healing, and specifically around healing the money shame. So I would love for us to talk a little bit about that, because I think this is such an important piece. I mean, you were saying it before we got into the story around the hardest part of putting your book together, but like overcoming that money shame. And you were thinking, I'm the only one with this money shame, but actually so many of us, if not all of us, have some. Can you just share a little bit about, and I mean, just for anyone listening around, it's okay to have money shame, and anything else that you want to share about that?
Sure. I mean, this has been a thread from the beginning. It felt like this cloak that was on us, like cloak of I'm not okay. I don't do money right. I don't know how to do it. Everyone else learned but me. Mine's more messier than everyone else's. Like everyone else got an education, I just didn't. And I'm just bad. I'm bad at this. I suck at this, or I'm a creative person, or I'm a spiritual person, or on and on. Or I have folks who come from wealthy families and there's shame and then layers of emotion around that. Like they feel guilty that they have this and others don't. They feel they were never given a direct money education and that all their needs have always been taken care of and beyond. So they don't know how to make their own income and they have shame around that. I have folks from a middle class background like me who there was a lot of power dynamics going on with my father around money, that he was very generous, and then there was a lot of conditions and they weren't always spoken about. And so, money for me was all wrapped around power and power over, and I had shame around that. And then people who come from, I usually call it working class, and some people call it lower class. Some people who come from this background say I came from a poor background, and they feel like they were never given a money education themselves, and so they feel shame around that, or they feel like they have bigger obstacles to overcome because of every background has strengths and has challenges and things to overcome. And sometimes I've seen over and over for years that we may come from opposite ends of the spectrum, but the patterns that we play out are almost identical. So that was almost shocking to me at first, but it's also why I do group work and do this work in community. I always have a handful of private clients, but I really want us to be brave enough, and it's hugely brave, to step into a room or community. And you can be quiet, you can sit back, out of 400 people, not everyone's like, hey, listen to my money story, or it may take them a while, because there just are layers of money shame at the beginning. And so sometimes we just need to sit back and witness and observe and watch the other people in the community sharing their money stories so openly, again, from all different backgrounds, all different kind of issues. Some of us are great earners, and we have a really hard time with saving and or shaping and directing our income. Others of us are under earners and really need to work on moving through money ceilings and making more. There's so many aspects of our relationship to money, practically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. We can have shame in all of those areas. We do. And I think I just want folks to know that like everyone has money shame or some degree of it. And for me, it's just good to acknowledge that and name that at the beginning. And then to please add in, like, what are your strengths in this area? Because we always just focus on the bad part or the crappy part or what we can't do. I haven't seen anyone, no matter what background, there's good stuff in there. So we need to go digging for it. And that's where we start leading into like, well, how do you shift money shame? And that leads right into, understanding your money story, the strengths, the challenges, the patterns, understanding where you come from and how that family has shaped you positively, negatively. Again, what are the challenges and what are the blessings? We all have them. And so moving out of money shame, it's just starting to say, I'm ready to look at this area, just like I've looked at food or body or relationship and intimacy. I'm ready to take a peek here. It's going to be scary, but like baby step at a time, I'm going to start to understand what my money story is here, bringing it out of the closet, bringing it out of the shadows. And, and then we move into all these other tools and practices of how to understand your money story and different tools that we use. And how to bring forgiveness to this area, and you need to create a money healing ritual, and on and on and on and on. But money shame for me is at the beginning, and I'll say one tool, because the body check-in is what I think dissolves money shame. And the body check-in comes straight from my somatic psychology background. And we all have a version of a body check-in, or if we meditate, or we do yoga, or we just take a moment to center in nature, we all have different versions. And the body check-in is literally taking 30 seconds or a few minutes to just check in with your body on a physical level. How are you seated? What do you notice? Sensations moving through your body, emotions, everything from anger, I'm so pissed that I have to even deal with this money stuff, to this money stuff is so boring and I just want to fall asleep, to I just get so much anxiety here and fear, to I want to check out of my body, to this is, I feel hope, like I feel excited, like this is just an exchange, it's just a tool, I can add my values in and create a life and a livelihood and a lifestyle, that I love. And like, it's the whole spectrum's welcome. Like we all have different patterns that we're, some of us are more into the sad or the checking out or the anger. So just really getting familiar with the emotion and the body check-in in this moment. What is your breath doing? And I invite people to do a body check-in before, during, or after all of the daily money interactions that we have. So when you're going to go have a money conversation with your honey or your spouse, do one before. Or maybe you don't remember to do it until you're in the middle of it, in the heat of the moment, and remember then. Or sometimes it's afterwards. We leave the shopping mall with a few bags of groceries and we suddenly wake up and go, what just happened? And so you can do a body check-in and debrief. So just by inviting yourself to do the body check-in as a practice on a daily basis, and it's just bringing awareness to this whole area, which leads to understanding, which leads to shifts, right? And so the body check-in for me is this daily tool and daily practice I have you bring to your money interactions. Of course, you bring it to all your other areas of life too, and it shifts that. But that's what starts dissolving the shame. Yeah.
Well, I'll give testimony to that. So I just want to share, and I think you'll just get you'll like hearing this. So Bari and I worked with Bari as a private client about 4 years ago. And that is one of the things that is the number one thing that stood out to me that I still remember and that I still implement from our sessions.
Right.
Because you'd have me, before we started our call and our session together, I would do that body check-in, and it was incredible what would come up for me. And it was like something, whatever the thing was that I needed support on would arise in that moment.
Yeah.
It was so powerful. And then, just speaking into this, healing the money shame, when we were working together, I was living with my parents.
Yeah.
And there were some underlying stories that had me in that situation and tied in. It was like money was tying me into being in the nest so my parents could take care of me. Meanwhile, having some money shame around some debt that I wasn't willing to tell them. And the moment when I told them in complete tears and shame, that whole thing lifted for me.
Yeah.
And it freed everything up. It freed me to get the heck out of there. Not that, it was a wonderful experience living with my parents at that time. So much healing had needed to occur, but so much was able to lift by me. That deep, dark secret that I was holding from them was able to lift, and everything was able to shift by me healing that money shame. So your work is brilliant.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And, thank you. I love that. I remember that. It might have been 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I remember so clearly. And it was a transition phase for you. And you were living at home. And I just remember like the visions of wanting to change that and have a different experience, And my God, have you done that? Beautifully. And the body check-in, people say, or I say, it's so simple and yet it's so profound. And so many of my tools are that. And if you actually live them, then subtle shifts happen to the point where you suddenly feel ready to reveal something that you've been afraid to tell them about this debt. And obviously it was a safe reception, like a safe, that, you chose to share it with people that were safe to share this piece of your shame and part of your story. And just that, and then movement, more movement happened from there. I mean, people, haven't paid taxes for years and are afraid to call the IRS, or and debts, on and on and on, or didn't read a marriage contract about the money part, and now they're separating, and they have a lot of shame that they didn't read it back then, but they were a very different person, and they also weren't in touch with their value at the time, and so didn't look at it, and on and on. So there's so much there that we all have. And at the end of the day, I mean, years later, there's no new stories about money that I haven't heard. I've heard everything. So, and there's a lot of major themes. So we're not alone.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I would love to talk a little bit about something you mentioned earlier, which is that one of the biggest issues for couples is money.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's definitely been up for my husband and I of actually coming into a business partnership together and consolidating income and just all of that. And, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and who's managing it, and, and just the accountability around it, and merging two bank accounts. I mean, after having my own money for years, to then come together. So yeah, what can you share with us? I would love to hear a tip, but also just a little bit about the issue of how couples are dealing with this as one of the number one issues.
Okay. A few things. So one, in general, couples, solos, creative entrepreneurs, like I'll say this, and you saw this as a chapter in the book, it's about money, and it's never about money. So that was a chapter that kind of surprised us, because for years I've been saying it's about money and it's not about money, but I didn't realize it really needed a whole chapter. So that was really exciting for us. And what we mean by that is, yes, we were not given a money education from grade school and up in small increments. Most of us were not. So that's a fact. That's true. So it's about the money in the sense that we need to learn the language of money and learn the tools and practices and learn a bookkeeping system and learn how to review our reports without getting all foggy and glazing over, and creating a financial support team, and all these parts that are about the practical side of money that we did not learn, most of us, how to manage money, how to have a relationship to money. Where it's not about money and it's all the deeper stuff is that it's all about safety and trust and security and power and responsibility. And we came up with, I don't know if there's about 5 to 7 themes in the book. There's probably more, but we had to limit it. And this is what's under the surface. Like, this is what's coming up when you're going to have a money conversation with your spouse in bed at night and someone brings up a really challenging thing, or you get the credit card statement and completely flip out and go to your spouse right away and want to have a conversation, or you're horrified at how they spent the money and you try to have the conversation from that place, right? So couples polarize around money. Most couples, sometimes 2 people are in cahoots and they're over there going, we don't want to grow up. Like, we both don't want to grow up. We want someone to take care of us. Who is that person, which family member or something? Most of the time couples polarize. One person comes from a traditional finance background. They're the designated smarty pants around money. The other person feels like the stupid one around money, and they don't know how to do anything. The finance person does not know everything about money. I've seen it over and over and over. One of my favorite couples and testimonials is he came from a traditional finance background. He thought he could teach her everything about money. It wasn't working. They were fighting like crazy. And they signed up for Art of Money, and he was so skeptical of how feminine my approach was, so skeptical about my style, the teaching, everything. And they went from fighting during their money dates to, 6 months, 8 months later, him realizing, he said, like, I swayed him. I brought him to the other side. Like, he got to see he doesn't know everything. He doesn't understand a lot of the emotional and psychological parts because he wasn't taught that in his traditional training, that his wife actually needed a different kind of teacher and she needed to learn money in a different way. And they eventually moved into really beautiful, compassionate, and loving money dates, after. But so couples polarize, everything from one person needs to be in control and so likes to manage everything and do the bookkeeping and track everything, and the other person wants to stick their head in the sand. And on and on. Ultimately, there's no better. Like, we each have things to learn from each other. We each have differences and we each have strengths. And we need to stop being so horrified that we're different. We're very different around money. Even if we have the same values in life or our larger goals, the way we spend money, save money, earn money, invest money, give money, all those little buckets in there, we do differently, right? And so I have like a series of things for couples to do, like if you're just beginning, here's 4 quick steps. Number 1, don't ever talk about the numbers first. So I feel like we actually need to go back to the beginning because we weren't given an education around how to do money. And then couples weren't given an education about how to do money with each other, let alone they weren't taught how to do it themselves, let alone together. So we can even have great communication and be working on ourselves, in all these ways. And money, we still fight in. So I want us to go back to the beginning, whether you're entering a marriage, entering a relationship, 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30 years down the road. You start with story time first. So these are money dates. Money dates is just giving money attention, practically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, right? Some people like to light candles, drink a glass of wine, add a little chocolate. It depends what time of day it is. I want you to ritualize it a bit. But for couples, sitting down and doing some story time. So we don't go to numbers first. We just each maybe get 15 minutes. We do 30 minutes total. And each person shares stories of growing up and images or memories or reactions or beliefs that happened from their childhood. When did they first make money? What was their role in their siblings? Like, were they the spender and their siblings were the savers? There's so many series of questions, but it's just giving couples some story time with each other to go back to the beginning. I can say more. Obviously, I can talk days about any of this. So number 2 then is moving into values. So what are each of your values and how are you spending in accordance with your values? So my husband likes expensive gear. And so he really wanted a road bike. I was horrified. I don't spend money in big chunks like that. I do lots of little self-care. Not, tons of acupuncture, lotions, chiropractor, right? So he had to sit me down and not make a case, but, tell me how he was going to pay for this bike, what it meant to him, what he was going to receive. He was going to get sexy points from, looking great, and like it would help his health. And we had to sit down and talk about our values and then talk about obviously how much was coming in, right? And then where do we want to be representing these values? How do we want to be spending? Where do we agree? Where do we not? What's negotiable? What's not? We had to talk about values and spending. And at the end of the day, it took a few conversations to get that his road bikes are very expensive, but after a few years of my self-care, it actually equals almost a similar amount, right? But at first glance, we're both just horrified because we spend in different ways. So you need to have value conversations. Then 3 is who's on what, who's managing what. So who wants to do the bookkeeping, who's done it in the past, who's willing to take it over? Is anyone good at this? Maybe you don't have either people who feel good at this, or, so just like, usually one person says they're going to do it, and then at the end of the month, I really highly recommend that you then come together and start reviewing all of the numbers together, right? Or who's going to pay bills and who's going to transfer. And I kind of call that, then also it's like kind of like quickies in the kitchen. Like you can, like we need to transfer money, or like we need to move this account, and that's in the who's on what, right? And then the 4th thing is more just about your visions and dreams and where you're going, and who's the full-time job and who's the entrepreneur, or are you both going to join together? And then there's so much nuance of like, are we merging our accounts? I've had couples who merged right away, and because that's just what was the tradition or what you thought you should do. And then years later, they separated their accounts. And that's what saved their marriage. I've had couples that were the reverse of that. They were separate, and we were separate for 7 years. And then I got pregnant intentionally, and then it became the obvious move to merge together. But I had been trying to get my husband to merge for a while, and he was like, no, 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 he doesn't remember this now. He was like, I need my own separate thing, and like, so it always represents a different level of intimacy. So there's not one right move. It's what's the right move for this couple at this time. So those are 4 steps of how couples can kind of go back to the beginning, knowing that this was not taught to us, knowing that there's a lot of tension, a lot of projection on this whole area. And if we can go back to kind of the beginning and recreate some sacred money dates, that can really shift things.
I love that. Thank you so much for all of that. It's just really beautifully laid out. And I just want to add in, if you're not in a relationship, then creating those sacred money dates with yourself.
Really.
Yes. And all of those things could easily apply if you're single, looking at what you're spending in terms of values and just everything that you said. So
yeah,
it's brilliant. So I know we can literally have an all-day interview because money is such an incredible, juicy topic. I wanted to ask a question, and it was occurring to me. I remember when you launched your year-long program.
Yeah.
And I remember reading an email, or I don't know if it might have just been to your list. But I remember reading how the key for you was in opening yourself to receive.
It was something like that. Yeah. It was called soft open, soft close.
Yeah. And you had meant, and so before you go into this, you just mentioned how this man, the couple, and he's this finance guy, and he was, a little bit, not really trusting your feminine approach.
Yeah.
Literally, I mean, you have this very feminine approach to money, but also to business.
Yeah.
And so for the feminine leaders who are watching this right now, you model that so brilliantly. And it felt like that was really a turning point for you in opening yourself up to now hold space for 400 people in this year-long program. Yeah. Was about opening yourself up to receive. So anyway, I'd love to just hear your thoughts on this.
It's also part of my money story and upbringing story, because I was raised with entrepreneurs, but a different style of entrepreneurship. It was much more aggressive. It was much more intense. It was much more masculine. And I watched my father do this, and I couldn't do it. I was like, I'm never going to be in business if it has to be done that way, And so, that led me to my training as a therapist. It led me to doing somatic work, which is really about slowing down and listening to your intuition and listening to your body's messages. So from day one, when I was even conceiving of my work and growing it step by step, it's always been checking with my body, what feels right, what doesn't, how fast, how slow, what's my pacing. And so here I was in year 11 or something in my business. And I'd had a few different business models because I was always searching for a few things. It was a good challenge to see if I could break through money ceilings, because I came from an under-earning, lower in earning background. I wanted to go from 11 to 15 an hour to 20 to, first I was looking at my hourly rate. How could I break through that money ceiling? And then I started challenging myself for many reasons to see if I could break through. I was then earning money on a monthly basis, and I wanted to see if I could earn money on a 3-month basis, and then 6-month, because I wanted more stability, and so part of how I would get a sustainable business model was I grew a team at year 3.5 and had other bookkeeping trainers and financial coaches on, and then we had more sustainable income. Then when Noah came, I didn't get rid of my business partner, but we parted ways. I had a business partner for 3.5 years. I had the whole team. When my son came, I had to get really simple again. And so here's another thing in our world. As a business, you're always supposed to be growing, always supposed to be expanding, always supposed to be going at this fast pace. And somatically, that doesn't work for me. And there's ebbs and flows, and there's ups and downs, and there's some years for growth, small, medium, big. There's some years to save more and give more, and there's other years to simplify. So when my son was born and we had the labor that we had, so conceived him on the first try and then had a heck of a labor. And so I was in recovery. And so I had to suddenly figure out what I was going to do in 10 hours a week compared to 40, 50, right? And got really simple again. So income went down, and then 2 years later, started learning how to leveraging. And okay, so to get to this place, it was 11th year of my business. And I, at the time, was doing a 3-month program. I used to call my work conscious bookkeeping before I moved into the art of money. And it was also included a home study that I had created when my son was 2. And my husband was also doing his tech husband business. It was the first year of it. And we were launching every 3 months, or like sometimes on top of each other. So we were opening a program and launching it seemed like every other month, the energy was so intense. I started feeling like, wait a second, how did I get here? This is starting to feel really aggressive and starting to feel really intense and starting to feel really masculine. And so I suddenly started asking, like, okay, like, how do I shift this? I have to believe that I can shift the energy of this, that I can step into a new business model here and I just started saying things like, I want to have something where I can serve the most and give the most of my teachings and content and be really generous in that way, right? And I also can't do this launching thing every 3 months. It's not working anymore. I was also stepping into my 44th birthday, 44th year. I felt this level of maturity inside of me that was deeper than I had ever had before. I had a feeling that I felt like my community had matured. I felt like we were ready for a year-long journey, and I was ready for it. And again, it was like, I could tell it would satisfy that I can be so generous with content, but then also really honor time and my energy and boundaries and, have space in between in a year-long program. And I just got this vision. I just got a vision of the year long. I'd already had the content because the home study was 11 modules, made it into 12, vision the guest teachers. And I just, like, my prayer, my questions out into the world were just like, I need to change the energy of this. I need to do it different. I need to open. I need to stop calling it a launch. I hate that. This is not working for me. And I was adding all of these qualities and words into it, and opened up the year-long program and went from having 50 students to 320 students, like in an instant. But the other thing was that went against our the traditional coaching world online is you're supposed to always be increasing your fees. And I was at a mid price point with my 3-month program, and I decided to lower my fees. I just had a sense I would serve more people, and I was ready to serve a lot more people. So I lowered my fees. The 3-month, I think I was around 750 for a 3-month program. I lowered it so it was more accessible to $88 a month. So while over a year being 1,050 is more than 700 for a year, and the $88 price point was just way more accessible for a much higher majority. And by reducing my fee, I not only got so many more people in my community, but my revenue went up significantly. And I went into getting a year-long salary, even though it comes in monthly payments. And so it was all about opening. It was all about opening and receiving in a different way and not pushing for that moment in my business in the developmental stage. Yeah. I'm not saying it's never okay to push the river.
Yeah.
Because I do a little bit, but for the most part, that's not what I'm doing. Yeah.
All right, last question before we're running out of time here.
Okay.
about being a mompreneur. And
Yeah.
now that I have a 13-month-old, I can relate. And you mentioned that, around how you really had to ebb and flow as baby comes into the world. You've gone through this hard labor, you got to cut back, you got to simplify, and then coming back again. But what would you say to the mamas out there who are starting businesses and learning how to balance that? What's been your journey and some of the lessons?
Well, I used to call myself a mommypreneur. So for the first few years, I was a mommypreneur, and I loved that. And then I think it was just a year or two ago that I was like, okay, I'm officially a mompreneur. Like my child's 7.5 now. So that was just like a sweet naming title, that mommypreneur. Um, Ultimately, we don't know how we're going to feel until we get to the other side of our labor and the birth of our child, because it's so different for everyone. It goes so differently for everyone. And there's usually so many lessons just in our labor, for some of us who have it planned all out, and then it doesn't go that way. Right away, we get like, okay, we cannot, we have to let go, we have to let go. And so that's right away. You need to wait to see who you're going to be on the other side.
And who your kid's going to be too.
And who your kid's going to be. Do you have a sleeper? No, I didn't get one. It took me until year 3 until he slept through the night, So, I mean, did you get a sleeper? Did you not?
Yep.
Nurse, will they not? I mean, on and on and on, right? That's a whole thing I'm not even going to get into. So, one of my favorite blog posts, and it was just reminded to me the other day, and it was about the stages of being a mommypreneur. And I knew it's called "I Knew This Day Would Come as a Mommypreneur." And you can see pictures of me in the first few months with my son, and I go through like 0 to 2, like,
yeah.
What did I do in 10 hours a week? And did we have a nanny for like 5 hours a week? And when did we add her in? And what was my energy levels? And what could I do? And what was I doing? And then year 2 to 3, I think I added a second day of my nanny and childcare. And then what could I do then? And so it really maps out my developmental journey. With my son all the way up until I think this was just up until he was 4.5. So it's a really sweet, really long article about 0 to 4.5. And I wrote it because at 4.5, we built him a bed. We built him a red fort bed that he could paint. And he went into his own bed. He's now back in our room at 7.5, because we moved and we have now like a 5-level house, and so we're still getting comfy, and he's back in our room, and he's our only child, and he's not going to be in our room forever. So but it's a really great like developmental outline of both like what I could do, my energy, time, childcare, what I did in the business, when I added a team player back in because I'd let go of the whole team. So when I started, and then how I started leveraging again. So while everything got so simple again, and my God, I mean, if you're anything like what happened to me or our situation, like I was so crazily sleep deprived that my question became, in 10 hours, what do I love the most and what's the most lucrative? Because I was so crazily sleep deprived. Like I was teaching, I chose to do my group program online because it was teleconference back then. You couldn't see me. And that's what I could do best. And that's how I could still give. There wasn't much beyond that. And then that's what I could do. And so I had to be really realistic and honest. I'm also an older mom. I'm 47 now. I had my son 4 months before my 40th. So what else? Just like, just let yourself, if you have to get really simple again. I mean, some people set up whole teams before they give birth and they keep going, and they power through. And for me, I needed to really simplify again. But then by year 2, I got more energy, created the home study. Year 3, we were sleeping. I was like, oh my God. And year 3, 4, 5, I started learning how to really leverage. And so while my income went way down the first few years and we had to really simplify, and we were in a transition financially, and in any transition, everything gets thrown up in the air. All your systems, everything that was working doesn't work anymore. You got to figure it all out again. You got to give yourself time. And we used a huge part of our savings. Like, I mean, we like went into a little business debt during that time. I'm okay with it. Like I that's what we did. And then, a few years later, got some energy and steam going again, and then learn how to grow the business again and surpass anything that we were at before, when I had a team and a business partner. Fully surpass that. So but it's
Right.
been it's been a slow, step by step, with some leaps process.
So we'll share that blog post link in the show notes for those of you looking for it. It's there on the page. And thank you, Bari, for just being amazing. And so how are people going to find and buy your book?
Okay. So right now we're still in pre-order, so you can order it anywhere online. Anywhere.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Amazon, Indie, Barnes & Noble, all of it.
So we have a link for that in the show notes as well.
You can also just go right to baritessler.com.
Great.
Going to get a whole new look within a month. I'm so excited. When you're like on the verge of a new website and can't stand it. We have a book page. On my book page has all the book endorsements and what the book's about, and links to all the pre-orders, and people can join my Book Street team. It's all on that book page, and soon to be, a whole new site. So
great.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Thank you. And so in closing, I'd love to just, briefly have you share what sisterhood means to you and how it supported you in this process of starting your book and being a businesswoman.
So there's so many layers to sisterhood, There's our close little inner circle. There's the wider community. There's all our colleagues. For me, especially in the last 7 years, sisterhood so much is about. I have my inner circle, but on top of that, there's so many colleagues. Like so many, we're friends, we're sisters, we're colleagues, and I've met so many women that way. And even for the last 15 years, like it's always been important to me to know all the people in the field, who are they, and wanting to collaborate with folks, and just having those connections, so that I can go to the few pioneers before me in the financial therapy field, and they're all they're turning 70. And I'm going to see them on my book tour live, and they're coming out for me. And then other women my age, older, just like some of them are in the book. Some of them I interviewed. It's all the series I do. Sisterhood for me is just all the women that I get to connect with and be friends with, and vice versa. In friendship, in sisterhood, in our creative business lives, and just sharing it with everyone, and getting to live life in this way with all these women all over the world. And a lot of them are my students too, or in my community too. So they're all, we have some men and we have female couples, and we have male female couples. And so, it's, my husband used to say to me, why don't you just brand as like, you just work with women? I'm like, come on, it's so feminine. I'm like, yeah, but there are some guys that really need it and want it, and they get it, and they understand the language. And so much of my world is women.
Well, thank you. And everyone, make sure that you pre-order this amazing book. You're going to love it. And go check out Bari at her website, her new website. And you can find all the links on the show, on the the show notes below, baritessler.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you
You
so
have
much.
like a short little words of wisdom to leave our listeners with.
Oh boy, short words of wisdom.
Mm.
Just please give yourself the gift of little body check-ins every day, in money and in life.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.